Unbelievable. Just unbelievable how the Sharks managed to snag defeat from the jaws of victory here this afternoon against the Capitals and lose it 5-4 in overtime. And the thing is, if you had told me yesterday that the Sharks were actually going to go into overtime and get a point here against the league's best team on the second half of a back-to-back 2 afternoon games in a row with all this travel, I probably would have been quite happy with the single point. And yet now seeing how this game has played out, it is just so disappointing. Maybe the Sharks' most disappointing loss of the season probably is maybe in competition with that Detroit Red Wings shutout. But let's start off with the positives here. As the Sharks go through this first period, they actually have control of it for the first few minutes before the Capitals really rush back in the later half of that first period. But in the end, it's 0-0 after 1. In the second period is where we get the majority of the scoring. It would be Evander Kane getting a natural hat trick, scoring the only goals for the Sharks on a manned net. He made it 1-0 before Nick Dowd made it 1-1. He would then make it 2-1 and 3-1 before Vrana would get a late second period goal to make it 3-2. And with this late second period goal and the Sharks' history of the third periods against the league's best team, one of the league's best offense, it wasn't necessarily looking good heading into the third, but the Sharks for the first 19 minutes actually did a great job of defending against the Capitals. Jones made a couple of key saves on players like John Carlson, and the Sharks kept that one goal lead alive. Eventually, a great play by Meier to intercept a pass that was going towards Ovechkin, and then a great play by Brent Burns to step up in the neutral zone on a pass going towards Ovechkin would lead to the Couture empty netter, and it looked like the Sharks had put this one away and taken down the league's best team. But instead, they get lazy, they get complacent, and as the puck works its way back into their own zone, the Capitals have the goalie pulled again, but they don't have their big guns on the ice. They have players like Vrana and Eller, who certainly aren't any slouches, but they're not future Hall of Famers like Ovechkin is, and the Sharks get 4 players along the left side of the board just completely watching the puck. And if you're going to send 4 players along the boards, you better make damn sure this puck doesn't somehow get by them and lead to Vrana just being able to have a down low 2-on-0. He ends up taking the shot anyway, and Martin Jones lets it in to make it 4-3 Capitals. So the Sharks finally seem to remember that they're not actually yet on the flight to St. Louis for the next game, and they still actually have a game to finish out. They take the center ice faceoff, they lose it. It works its way eventually back into their own zone. And while they do a decent job of keeping it to the perimeter for a few seconds, eventually it sneaks through. Oshie gets basically the first shot here, and it once again goes in, and the Sharks have the game tied. We go into the overtime. The Sharks get a couple of great chances to end it, a 2-on-1 with Burns and Kane, a breakaway with Brent Burns, but it would eventually be a Capitals 2-on-1 with Lars Eller, who would end the game, and the Sharks would lose. As I said, in the grand scheme of things, maybe looking back at this game at the end of the season, if the Sharks do manage to make the playoffs, we can say, well, they did get this point against the Capitals, which was quite important. But also in the grand scheme of things, maybe at the end of the season, if the Sharks do miss the playoffs, especially if it's only by a couple of points, they're going to be looking back at this one as the point that got away, because there's no reason. Even the worst team in the league, which the Sharks are not, against the best team in the league, which the Capitals are, should a team with a 2-goal lead after an empty netter with a minute to go in the game should ever lose in this situation. First thing to talk about would be Martin Jones, and as I said, for the first 59 minutes, Jones was doing exactly what he and Aaron Dell had been doing in these past few games for the Sharks goaltending-wise. They were making some pretty decent saves. A couple of goals did sneak through. He didn't have any chance on Vrana's first, but he did have a bit of a chance on Dowd one, even if this wasn't an easy save. But we come down to the last minute, and while Jones should never be in a position where this situation happens on Vrana's second goal because of how awful the Sharks' defense was in this situation, Jones does need to eventually come up with a big save. It's something the Sharks need here in this stretch of games leading up to trying to get back into a playoff position. Not only do they need players offensively to step up like Kane did here tonight, not only do they need improved defense like they've been mostly getting besides this last minute, but they need their goaltenders to come up with big saves. And with Vrana's second goal, and especially this Oshie one, while not easy saves, are ones you would like to see your goaltender actually come up with something, and he was unable to do so. So just basically 2 shots here in the last 45 seconds, last minute of the game. Jones lets in both, and we head to the overtime where we see Braden Holtby, who had let in 3 goals in this game, wasn't having a great game himself, but he comes up with a big 2-on-1 save, he comes up with a big breakaway save, and then finally the Capitals get a chance. They get this 2-on-1, and it's a goal by Eller. So you're looking at Martin Jones. He plays a solid 59 minutes. He makes a couple of nice saves in the third period, early third period, mid-third period to keep the 1-goal lead alive. But eventually, he just, while again shouldn't have been put in a position, but in this like this by the Sharks defense, he can't come up with any big saves for the Sharks, and they lose the extra point. So it's a bit of a disappointing one. We'll see who actually gets the next game start. My money is on Aaron Dell at this point for the game against St. Louis. Next, I'll be talking about Evander Kane. As I said, he scores all 3 goals on the man net for the Sharks in this game. The hat trick for him, his 3rd career hat trick, all 3 of those hat tricks with the San Jose Sharks, interestingly enough. And Kane had a great start to the season, as we'll remember, but then had a stretch of games where he only put up a couple of goals. Now with this 3-goal game, maybe this is the start of another good stretch. As we know, Kane is an extremely streaky player, but if the Sharks do want to be able to get back into the thick of things, back into the playoff race, back into the wild card race, they will need Evander Kane, one of their better top 6 players, to actually step up here, and this was a good start against a good team. And finally, I will talk about these Sharks power play, as they did manage to actually score 2 power play goals here in this game, which more or less doubles their output or something like that of the last 20 or so games. And I don't think the power play showed that much fantastic improvement. I mean, the second power play goal in this game, this is one that gets blocked on a shot by Erik Karlsson, goes straight to Kane, which he's able to put in. That's not something that you can necessarily replicate time and time again, but at least that first power play goal, this was a great pass by Joe Thornton into the middle for Evander Kane to score, was some nice adaptation, was something different that we haven't seen from the Sharks power play. So I don't know if this is going to be the start of something beautiful for the Sharks power play, but at least they managed to score a couple, even though the Sharks end up still losing in very disappointing fashion. But that will do it for this review. The Sharks will be back in action on Tuesday. They will face off against the St. Louis Blues, a team that also I wouldn't say dominated the last appearance between those two teams, but the Blues were the better team in that one as the Sharks lost, and they'll look to try and get revenge in that situation like they tried to do here tonight against the Capitals, and hopefully they'll have a different fate. Class dismissed.